Right now, an investigation is underway after a man is shot and killed at a Dane County gas station overnight. We'll tell you what we know.
Scientists are making their voices heard. I'm Tanasia Shaw, covering the protests that are bringing hundreds of people to the state capitol.
This feels like a complete lack of leadership.
Wisconsin elections commissioners are continuing the investigation into uncounted Madison ballots. What they say went wrong in November. We welcome you to News 3 Now at 6. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Eric Franke.
And I'm Sarah Carlson.
A man is dead after an apparent homicide in the town of Pleasant Springs.
The incident happened at the BP gas station just off of I-3990 on County Highway N. Police say they got a 911 call just after midnight. Deputies found a 23-year-old man at the gas station. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Right now, no one is in custody, but the sheriff's office says they're looking for multiple suspects who they believe knew the victim. We talked to a business next door to the gas station about safety in that area.
I'm always worried that somebody will be coming in to rob us yeah. And I know there's a drug problem next door, so.
Detectives are looking to interview witnesses, so if you have any information, please call the Madison Area Crime Stoppers. That number there, 608-266-6014.
Now to an update on a deadly crash from yesterday afternoon. A person has now been arrested for the incident. It happened at the intersection of Raymond Road at Gammon Lane about 4 o'clock. Madison police say they arrested a 20-year-old man on suspicion of a homicide by intoxicated use of a vehicle and OWI causing injury. One person was pronounced dead at the scene. An adult and 2 children were also hospitalized. Their injuries are believed to be non-life-threatening.
Madison is home to one of the biggest research universities in the world.
And today, hundreds of protesters met at the Capitol to, quote, stand up for science after recent cuts to the National Institutes of Health. Our Tanasia Shaw spoke to demonstrators that say these cuts could change the city of Madison.
What are you studying?
I'm getting my PhD in theoretical chemistry. I'm getting mine in medicinal chemistry.
Avery Green and Alexis Mann are grad students at UW. Friday, they took a break from the lab to make sure their voices are heard.
I don't think people realize, like the everyday people of this country realize how much we do here impacts their lives, their medicines, their well-being.
In February, President Donald Trump announced he would cut funding to the National Institutes of Health. The cuts are currently on pause, but researchers are already seeing impacts.
So we need funding. We would not be here without having the funding that we've gotten from NIH and NSF.
To put it into perspective, the researchers told me that without funding, it would have taken several months or even years for scientists to discover vaccines for viruses like COVID and the flu.
But if there hadn't been the nation's top scientists working day and night, 24/7, with all the help from funding of the federal government, we would not have had that vaccine ready in time.
And I spoke to some of these protesters that you see marching, and they said they are marching because science ultimately saves lives.
If you care about women going into labor, if you care about people dealing with suicidal ideations, if you care about the future of America and research, you should really look at trustable sources and do your own research.
Demonstrators at the Stand Up for Science March also said the funding cuts could impact the capital city itself.
Madison does a lot with their nursing program. NIH-funded research is truly all over the place. It goes to psychology, nursing, chemistry, biology. It's truly all-encompassing. My sign here says, science and everyday life cannot and should not be separated. And that's the truth.
Reporting in Madison, Tanasia Shaw, News 3 Now.
Tanasia, thank you. The protest took place in other cities throughout the country as well.
Well, a snowy start to the weekend will soon give way to spring-like temperatures. Meteorologist Blaze Keller has your certified most accurate forecast out on the patio.
That's right. We're looking at the 40s and 50s for your weekend. We're going to be a little bit cooler on Saturday, but by Sunday we're in those mid-50s. Partly sunny conditions Saturday. More sunshine expected on Sunday. Southwesterly winds are going to really help warm us up as we head into the weekend after a snowy Friday, and we just got off of a wintry mix earlier this week, so we do need a break, and we do get it as we head into the weekend. But that does begin tonight. Over the next several hours, we're going to continue to chip away at the remaining clouds, now mainly across the Illinois-Wisconsin border, leaving us with clear conditions as we head into your overnight hours. If you're going to be heading out tonight, you may want to grab that jacket because it is going to be a little bit on the cooler side tonight. Eventually, we'll settle into those teens to low 20s, right around where we should be for this time of year. Now, next week, we started out in the 60s, and we could end the week in the 60s as well. We're going to talk about a late week system, what we're looking at, and talk about any other systems that we could see next week in the full forecast.
All right, Blaze, thank you. Today, Wisconsin elections commissioners met to determine the fate of the investigation into Madison's 193 missing ballots from November. Those missing ballots were spread across wards 56, 65, and 68.
Our Ellie LaLiberte was at today's meeting and breaks down why the commission chair says she still has questions.
This 13-page memo by Elections Commission staff shows how 193 absentee ballots went uncounted in the November election. But it also shows there are still a lot of unanswered questions. That's why the WEC voted unanimously today to continue the investigation.
I am troubled. I am genuinely troubled by the number of profoundly bad decisions.
Wisconsin elections commissioners are stunned Friday morning as they dig through an investigation detailing what caused 193 absentee ballots to go uncounted in the November election.
I really do have a lot of questions about what all was going on that allowed for this.
Deciding to continue that investigation and indicating they wanted to talk directly to the Madison clerk.
The right of taking depositions is passed 6-0.
In the report, staff find that the city clerk, Mary Beth Weitzel-Bale, fails to implement policies to double-check that all the ballots were counted.
This feels like a complete lack of leadership.
It also finds communication flaws between the city and county clerk's offices and the WEC once the missing ballots were discovered.
As clerk, someone had alerted me to these ballots. I would have been personally calling the county clerk.
I am genuinely shocked by this timeline.
But the state's elections commission still doesn't know how the uncounted absentee ballot bags went unnoticed and where those bags were located at the polling place on election day. In a statement, the city of Madison says it will conduct its own internal review, saying in part, quote, the clerk's office has already implemented new procedures and safeguards to ensure that this never happens again. But Commissioner Mark Thompson says although the 193 didn't alter any election results, those voters' rights were infringed upon.
This should be as big of a deal if it's one unaccounted ballot or 193.
Reporting at the state capitol, Ellie LaLiberte, News 3 Now.
Thank you, Ellie. Commissioners also voted today to draft guidelines for clerks across the state to prevent a similar situation on the April 1st election.
Well, we're a little more than 3 weeks away from that election, which features that crucial race for the Supreme Court. We've been bringing you one-on-one sit-downs with the candidates, and this week we sit down with conservative candidate Brad Schimmel. We asked him about when he decided to go from Waukesha judge to now running for the state Supreme Court.
And this is what's motivated me to get in the race, is we have a court that is now legislating from the bench. They don't like what the legislature has done, so they're changing it. That's a problem.
You can see more from our interview this Sunday at 10:30 a.m. on For the Record. Still ahead at 6, preventing colorectal cancer, some of the signs and symptoms to look out for.
It's heart-wrenching for a family like mine to try to figure out what's next, then who's going to take care of her?
This is a mother who's worried that her daughter's complex care may no longer be covered. This as UW Health and Anthem tried to work out a new deal.
You're watching News 3 Now at 6.
UW Health's contract negotiations with Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield Wisconsin hit a snag last week.
So if a new deal is not reached, UW Health would no longer be in network for Anthem insurance customers. As Arman Rahman found, it's putting patients, including those who need complex care, on a road of uncertainty.
While Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield Wisconsin and UW Health battle over price increases, patient families like Michaela Schultz and her mom are left looking at having to rebuild their medical care from the ground up.
This is affecting families like mine and my daughter.
Michaela Schultz has her routines
Do you want to listen to Netflix?
that help her relax and smile.
She is just happy. She loves music. She loves interacting with people. She loves dancing.
But this email from Michaela's hospital, UW Health, plunged her mom, Deborah, into
a state of panic.
Michaela was diagnosed with Phelan-McDermid syndrome when she was a baby, a rare genetic disorder that causes a variety of symptoms.
She's got seizures, epileptic, kidney, heart. She's nonverbal. She is severely cognitively delayed.
She requires a complex team of about 20 physicians in neurology, cardiology, ophthalmology, and more that have not been easy to assemble.
And it just so happens that the physician that she has seen at 1 year old at the UW Neurology Department, he's still seeing her today.
If UW Health leaves Anthem's network, Deborah says the only other nearby hospital that's treated someone with Phelan-McDermid is in Milwaukee.
What about in the winter, if she has an emergency?
She called her insurance, which is through Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois.
And they said, well, Blue Cross is Blue Cross. Doesn't matter if you're Wisconsin or Illinois.
That's because her plan is part of the Blue Card program. That allows Illinois members who live in another state, like Wisconsin, to use hospitals in that state's Blue Cross network. But if, in this case, UW Health does end up leaving Anthem's network, they tell her,
it does affect you.
I reached out to both Anthem and Blue Cross of Illinois for information. Deborah was told she could apply for continuity of care to keep getting treatment at UW Health after April 15th for, quote, a limited time or until treatment concludes.
Are we going to have to basically wait for the shoe to drop? This is a lifelong thing that she was born with.
While Michaela requires a lot of unique attention, it's a mother-daughter journey like any other.
She's definitely guided me through a lot.
But now Deborah is left lost.
It's very heartbreaking.
On what comes next.
Who's going to take care of my daughter?
If a deal with Anthem is not reached, UW Health facilities affected on April 15th include Madison Surgery Center, Generations Fertility Care, UW Health Rehab Hospital, and Unity Point Meriter.
That's Arman Rahman, thank you. In statements about the negotiations, UW Health says, quote, many Anthem members rely on UW Health for health care needs, ranging from primary care to complex care like organ transplants, for which we are often the best and sometimes only option. Our goal is to reach a fair agreement that reflects the value of our care and ensures patients with Anthem insurance continue to have access to our care, end quote. Meanwhile, Anthem says in a statement, quote, we want UW Health to remain in our networks and will continue to work with them to reach an agreement. However, we cannot agree to excessive price increases that would only make health care less affordable for our members, end quote.
March is Colon Cancer Awareness Month, and SSM Health is reminding everyone to get screened for the deadly disease. Most seemingly random occurrences of colorectal cancer develop from precancerous growths within the colorectal lining called polyps. Right now, health experts consider colonoscopies to be the gold standard for detecting these polyps, but there are other screening options available, like Cologuard.
It is a good option in the sense that, it's not invasive. It's something you can do at home. We do know that it is not quite as sensitive or specific as getting a colonoscopy.
Anyone who has increased risk for colorectal cancer due to family history or factors such as age should speak with their primary care provider about screenings and when they're due. Colorectal cancer signs often don't show up until the disease has progressed to later stages. And still ahead, Wisconsin's dairy workers get critically needed funds that were previously frozen.
Plus, a champion is crowned at the U.S. Championship Cheese Contest. How history was made at this year's competition.
And a big warm-up on the way for the weekend. Blaze returns with a complete forecast after the break.
You're watching News 3 Now at 6.
The U.S. Department of Agriculture is releasing critical funds for Wisconsin dairy workers. The USDA froze the federal dairy business innovation initiatives last week, prompting condemnation from the Wisconsin Cheesemakers Association. Now, last week, WCMA sent this letter to the USDA secretary imploring her to unfreeze those funds. The letter said the vast majority of that money was going to small businesses that cannot afford any kind of funding pause. The WMCA thanked both Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin and Republican Congressman Derek Van Orden for their help in unfreezing those funds.
Well, meanwhile, the U.S. Championship Cheese Contest has crowned a winner. And despite Wisconsin being the dairy capital of the world, this year's top cheese hails from Connecticut.
No.
I know, right? So for the second year in a row, an aged Gouda from the Constitution State took the top spot, and it's the first time there's been a repeat champion in the competition's history. Now, Lake County Dairy in Turtle Lake, Wisconsin, did finish second runner-up for its organic Copper Kettle Parmesan. There were more than 2,400 entries across 117 classes and from 31 states.
It's a lot of effort, but it's such a rewarding feeling to know that others feel that it's such a technically sound product, and it's great.
Okay, we still have a lot to brag about here. Wisconsin didn't take home the top spot, but cheesemakers here led the competition with 55 best-of-class gold medals.
That's more like it.
Right?
Yep.
Vermont cheesemakers won 13, and those from Idaho won 10.
Those were just participation trophies.
Right.
We know who the champs are. Temperatures warming up for the weekend. Blaze is back. He's got the complete forecast.
And now I'm hungry for some cheese. But yeah, it is going to be a very pleasant weekend out there after a couple rounds of wintry messes, if you will. We had one round that started off as rain, turned to snow. We got a break Thursday. We had some snow today. Into the weekend, sunnier as well as warmer temperatures. We talked about that. 40s on Saturday, 50s on Sunday, and then 60s we're starting out next week on Monday, but we could see them return by Friday of next week. We'll talk about the system that could bring up that warmth as well as some rain and storms in just a moment. But planning out your day on Saturday, starting out in those low 20s, partly sunny conditions, turning, I would say, mostly cloudy just briefly, though. We see that sunshine return into the second half of the afternoon, but we're set to climb into those upper low to mid 40s for some of us further north and east, but mid to upper 40s across a lot of central and southwestern Wisconsin. We may even slip into the low 50s across parts of Grant County, Crawford County, Iowa, Lafayette County tomorrow. We'll be in the mid-50s on Sunday, 60s, as I mentioned, on Monday. That low that warms us up on Monday, it keeps us dry, and its cold front cools us down into the 50s Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then a larger system, which is starting to grow in confidence, moving through the Midwest, will warm us up Friday, back into the mid-60s, maybe even the first 70s of the season, before we settle back into the 40s by Sunday, and then further into St. Patrick's Day. But up until that point, we're going to be sitting underneath some fairly warm air, especially there when we climb into those mid to upper 60s, and we can see that on Sunday and Monday of this week as well. Here's that system that we're going to continue to keep an eye on. It's been consistently showing up in our long-range models, and I really want to emphasize consistently. It's not starting here and then moving south and then back north. It's been staying in the Midwest, so we're going to be watching to see how this ultimately forms, but starting Friday and lasting through about Sunday of your upcoming work week, this healthy system is going to move through the Midwest, warm us up out ahead of it, and then as it's moving on through, it's going to pull down some cooler air out of Canada, and that's going to mean cool temperatures are starting to cool down as we go into St. Patrick's Day and then further into that Tuesday. It's just that time of year where we're tapping into some of that warmth to our south, and we're still pulling in some of that cold from our north in Canada. And that really does help get these systems, much more energized, bringing the chance for showers and thunderstorms, maybe even a severe thunderstorm or two Friday into Saturday. But until then, enjoy the quiet 40s tomorrow, 50s on Sunday when we spring forward, and then we're starting off next week in the 60s.
And coming up in sports, it's on to the championship for the Badgers. How Wisconsin skated by Duluth in the semifinals is next on News 3 Now. The Wisconsin women's hockey team has had pretty good memories playing in Amsoil Arena during the postseason. The last time the Badgers skated in Duluth during a tournament, they won a national championship. Stakes not as high today, but there's still a trophy up for grabs. Wisconsin taking on Duluth in the WCHA final face-off semifinals. Badgers down one in the first, but not for long. Kelly Gorbatenko deflects one in front of the net to tie this one up at 1. Then in the second, Casey O'Brien feeds Caroline Harvey, and Captain KK sends a snipe bar down to put UW up for good. Badgers win 3-1 and will play for another tournament championship Saturday afternoon. And it's your final reminder to check out this week's Wisconsin Huddle. Kirsten Sims joins us for the final episode of the season tonight at 6:30 right here on News 3 Now. High school boys hockey, Edgewood taking on Brookfield East in the Division I state semifinals. No score in the first. Crusaders on the attack, and Dylan Lenz sneaks one through the 5-hole to light the lamp. Edgewood led 1-0 after one. Second period now, it's tied at 2, and Mac Richter goes top shelf where Mama keeps those cookies. This one would go to 3 overtimes, and Owen Cook would play hero. Edgewood moves on to the finals with a 5-4 win in triple overtime. Pro Day, a day where you run, jump, bench, and drill in the biggest job interview of your life. And that day was today for Wisconsin football. In front of scouts from all 32 NFL teams, the Badgers put on a show and showed why taking someone from Wisconsin is a good investment for your franchise. And while it was fun, the guys are kind of glad the testing part is all over.
Testing, nobody likes taking an ACT or anything like that. I think I love to prove people wrong, and testing and stuff like that. I've been prepping for it for 2-3 months.
It's been a whirlwind. It's definitely busy, but it's been fun. Like getting to experience everything and meeting all the new people and building those relationships. It's good. It's fun, but definitely relieved to kind of be done with all that, and I can kind of just transition back into football mode.
We're all out of time, folks. Have a good evening.